Behind the golden gates of Buckingham Palace, where centuries of tradition meet modern scrutiny, a storm was brewing that would test the very foundation of the British royal family. It wasn't a political scandal or a constitutional crisis that threatened to shake the monarchy to its core. It was something far more personal and devastating. Queen Camilla, the woman who had waited decades to claim her rightful place beside King Charles, was about to unleash a fury that would force every member of the royal family to choose sides. Her explosive outburst wouldn't just echo through the palace corridors. It would reverberate across the Commonwealth, challenging everything the public thought they knew about the woman who had transformed from the most hated figure in Britain to its queen. What could drive a woman known for her composure and diplomatic grace to such a breaking point? What family secret, buried for years beneath layers of protocol and public smiles, was threatening to tear apart the very institution she had fought so hard to protect? The answer would unite the royals in ways they never expected, forcing them to confront not just Camilla's rage but the uncomfortable truths about loyalty, sacrifice, and the price of wearing the crown in the modern age. The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Clarence House as Queen Camilla stood at her office window, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the morning newspapers. The headlines screamed accusations that cut deeper than any sword: Camilla's secret vendetta exposed, and the Queen's hidden agenda revealed. But it wasn't the public scrutiny that had pushed her to the edge. It was the betrayal that came from within her own family. The previous evening's family dinner at Windsor Castle had started like any other. King Charles had been in good spirits discussing upcoming state visits and charitable engagements. Prince William and Catherine had arrived with their children, filling the formal dining room with laughter and the innocent chatter of the young princes and princess. Even Prince Harry had joined via video call from California, a rare moment of connection that had given everyone hope for healing old wounds. Camilla had spent hours preparing for this gathering, not just logistically but emotionally. She had chosen her words carefully, rehearsed her approach to a delicate subject that had been weighing on her mind for months. As the Queen Consort, she felt it was her duty to address the growing concerns about certain family members' public statements and their impact on the monarchy's reputation. The trouble began when she gently raised the topic of Prince Andrew's continued presence at public events. Despite the scandals that had tarnished his reputation, he remained defiant, appearing at family gatherings and royal functions as if nothing had changed. Camilla had received countless letters from concerned citizens and had endured uncomfortable conversations with foreign dignitaries who questioned the monarchy's judgment in allowing Andrew to maintain his visibility. Perhaps it's time Andrew stepped back completely from any public appearances, Camilla had suggested diplomatically, her voice steady despite the tension she could feel building in the room. The institution must come first, and public confidence is crucial for our future. The response was swift and devastating. Prince Andrew, who had been unusually quiet throughout dinner, suddenly erupted with a venom that shocked everyone present. He accused Camilla of orchestrating a campaign against him, of manipulating Charles and poisoning the family against him. His words became increasingly personal and cruel, dredging up decades-old resentments about a relationship with Charles, and questioning her right to make decisions about the family's future. "You were never meant to be here," Andrew had snarled, his face red with anger. "You're not royal blood, you never will be, and you have no right to decide who belongs in this family and who doesn't." But Andrew wasn't alone in his attack. To Camilla's horror, Princess Anne, whom she had always respected for her straightforward nature, sided with her brother. Anne's criticism was more measured, but equally cutting. She questioned Camilla's understanding of royal traditions and suggested that someone who had entered the family so late shouldn't presume to reshape centuries of protocol. Even more shocking was the silent support Andrew received from other family members. Prince Edward remained conspicuously quiet, his wife Sophie looking uncomfortable but offering no defense of Camilla. The younger royals, including some of Charles's cousins, seemed to close ranks around Andrew, their loyalty to blood relations overriding any consideration for Camilla's position as queen. King Charles had attempted to mediate, but his efforts only highlighted the deep divisions within the family. His defense of Camilla felt weak and obligatory, lacking the fierce protection she had hoped for from her husband. Even Prince William, usually diplomatic and measured, had seemed hesitant to fully support his stepmother, perhaps calculating the political implications of choosing sides in this family war. The evening had ended in uncomfortable silence, with family members departing earlier than planned and the usual warm farewells replaced by stiff nods and averted eyes. Camilla had maintained her composure throughout the ordeal, years of public scrutiny having taught her to hide her emotions behind a mask of royal dignity. But once alone in her private quarters, The reality of her isolation within the family she had tried so hard to serve hit her with crushing force.
Now, standing in her office the following morning, Camilla felt the weight of every compromise she had made, every criticism she had endured, and every moment she had bitten her tongue in service to an institution that seemed determined to remind her she would always be an outsider. The newspaper headlines were just the latest assault in a war of attrition that had been waging for decades.
The final straw came when she discovered that details of the private family dinner had been leaked to the press. The newspapers contained quotes that could only have come from someone who was present at the meal. The betrayal was complete. Not only had her family members failed to support her, but one of them had chosen to humiliate her publicly by sharing the intimate details of her vulnerability. Camilla's private secretary knocked softly on the door, announcing that the morning's appointments were about to begin. But Camilla knew she couldn't face another day of pretending everything was normal, of smiling through photo shoots and small talk while her family systematically undermined her authority and questioned her legitimacy. She picked up the phone and dialed King Charles' private number. When he answered, his voice carried the weariness of a man who knew the conversation would be difficult. "Charles," she said, her voice steady but cold, "I need to speak with you immediately, and I need you to call an emergency family meeting for this afternoon. Every working royal, every family member who was present last night, everyone needs to hear what I have to say." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Charles understood the gravity in his wife's tone. This wasn't a request, it was an ultimatum. "Camilla, perhaps we should discuss this privately first." "No," she interrupted, her composure finally cracking. "I've spent 20 years discussing things privately, making compromises, accepting insults for the good of the family. I've been patient while they questioned my every decision, my every attempt to serve this institution. I've remained silent while they treated me like an intruder in my own home, but I will not be undermined, betrayed, and humiliated without consequence." The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the blue drawing room at Buckingham Palace as family members began arriving for the hastily arranged meeting. The atmosphere was tense, with everyone aware that something significant was about to happen, but uncertain about what to expect. Prince William arrived first with Catherine, both looking concerned and slightly confused about the urgency of the summons. Prince Andrew entered with his characteristic swagger, seemingly unaware that his behavior the previous evening had triggered this crisis. Princess Anne followed, her expression stern and uncompromising, while Prince Edward and Sophie appeared nervous about the brewing confrontation. King Charles took his seat at the head of the long mahogany table, his face grave as he watched his family file in. The younger generation of royals filled the remaining chairs, creating an atmosphere that felt more like a tribunal than a family gathering. When Queen Camilla entered the room, the change in her demeanor was immediately apparent to everyone present. Gone was the diplomatic smile and carefully modulated voice they were accustomed to. Instead, she carried herself with a regal authority that commanded attention and respect, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made even the most senior royals shift uncomfortably in their seats. She didn't sit down. Instead, she stood at the opposite end of the table from Charles, facing the assembled family members like a general addressing troops before battle. The silence stretched uncomfortably as she surveyed each face, taking note of who met her gaze and who looked away. "For 20 years, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the ornate room, I have served this family and this institution with unwavering loyalty and dedication. I have endured public humiliation, personal attacks, and constant scrutiny while maintaining the dignity and composure expected of someone in my position." Andrew shifted in his seat, perhaps beginning to realize that his actions had consequences he hadn't anticipated. "I have never asked for special treatment or consideration based on my role as queen consort. I have simply asked for the basic respect that any family member deserves, and the professional courtesy that my position requires. Yesterday evening, I discovered that even those minimal expectations were too much to ask from some of you." The room remained silent, but the tension was palpable as family members began to understand the gravity of the situation they had created. Camilla's voice grew stronger, more commanding, as she continued her address. This wasn't just an expression of personal grievance. It was a queen asserting her authority and demanding accountability from those who had challenged her right to lead. "I have given my life to this institution," Camilla continued, her voice rising with controlled fury. "I have sacrificed my privacy, my personal relationships, and my own happiness to serve the crown. This is the government of the Bioke, committed persons, way different from the public, death threats, and of course sentence and judgment. But the people of the public realizes that presidential significance is a matter of discretion to be transparent. The queen consort had found her voice, and nothing would stop her from speaking her truth.
Last night, I watched as some of you revealed your true feelings about my place in this family. You questioned my authority, dismissed my concerns about the monarchy's reputation, and made it clear that you view me as an outsider who has no right to make decisions about our future.
But what happened after dinner was even more devastating. She paused, allowing her words to sink in before delivering the crushing blow. Someone in this room betrayed the privacy of our family discussion by leaking details to the press. Someone here chose to humiliate me publicly rather than address our differences privately. That level of disloyalty is not just a personal attack on me. It's an attack on the institution itself. The accusation hung in the air like a sword. Family members began looking at each other suspiciously. The unity they had shown against Camilla the previous evening now fractured by doubt and recrimination. Princess Anne was the first to speak, her voice defensive but less hostile than it had been the night before.
Camilla, if someone did leak information to the press, it wasn't with malicious intent. Perhaps someone simply made an error in judgment.
An error in judgment? Camilla's laugh was bitter and cold. When members of the royal family speak to journalists about private conversations, it's not an error, it's a calculated betrayal. And the timing, immediately after I dared to suggest that we consider the monarchy's reputation, makes the motivation crystal clear. King Charles finally intervened, his voice heavy with disappointment. This accusation is extremely serious. If someone here has violated our family's trust by speaking to the media, they need to take responsibility immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. No one stepped forward to confess, but the guilty knowledge was written on several faces. Camilla studied each person carefully, her years of reading people and navigating complex social situations serving her well in this moment of crisis. Prince Edward looked particularly uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact and fidgeting with his papers. Sophie's face was flushed and she kept glancing nervously at her husband, but it was the subtle exchange of looks between Andrew and one of the younger royals that confirmed Camilla's suspicions about the source of the leak. Since no one has the courage to admit their betrayal, Camilla continued, let me be absolutely clear about what will happen next. I am not simply Charles's wife who happens to hold a title. I am the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. I have constitutional duties and responsibilities that transcend family politics and personal grudges. She began pacing slowly around the table, her presence commanding attention from every person in the room. For too long I have allowed some of you to treat this monarchy like a family business, where blood relations trump merit and where personal loyalty matters more than public service. That ends today. This institution belongs to the people we serve, not to us. Our duty is to them, not to protecting each other's reputations when they become liabilities. Prince William leaned forward, his diplomatic training evident as he attempted to mediate. Camilla, we all want what's best for the monarchy. Perhaps we can find a way to move forward that addresses everyone's concerns. William, Camilla responded, her tone softer but still firm. I appreciate your diplomatic approach, but this isn't a negotiation. This is me establishing the boundaries and expectations that will govern our working relationship going forward. She returned to her position at the head of the table, standing directly opposite King Charles in a symbolic assertion of her co-equal status as monarch. From this day forward, any family member who wishes to maintain their royal duties and privileges will conduct themselves with the professionalism and dignity that the institution requires. Personal attacks on other family members, whether in private or public, will have immediate consequences. Leaking private information to the media will result in the complete loss of royal status and funding. The shock on several faces was evident. Camilla was not making idle threats. She was establishing new rules for how the family would function, and her authority to enforce those rules was becoming undeniably clear. Furthermore, she continued, any family member whose personal conduct becomes a liability to the monarchy will be required to step back from public duties regardless of their birth order or personal feelings about the matter. The institution's reputation takes precedence over individual desires for relevance and attention. This was clearly directed at Prince Andrew, who had grown increasingly red-faced as the meeting progressed. But before he could respond, Camilla addressed him directly. Andrew, your behavior last night was unacceptable, but it was simply the culmination of years of selfish decisions that have damaged this family's reputation. Your refusal to acknowledge the impact of your choices on the monarchy's credibility cannot continue. You will immediately cease all public appearances and withdraw from any events where you might be photographed or quoted.
Prince Andrew exploded from his chair, his face contorted with rage. You have no right to banish me from my own family.
I am a prince of this realm, and I will not be dictated to by someone who married into this family. The room erupted in chaos as years of suppressed resentments finally surfaced. Andrew's outburst triggered responses from other family members, some supporting him and others recognizing the validity of Camilla's position. Voices rose as long-standing grievances were aired publicly for the first time. But it was King Charles who restored order, his voice cutting through the noise with royal authority that reminded everyone present of the hierarchy they had momentarily forgotten.
Enough. His command silenced the room instantly. Andrew, you will sit down and you will listen. Everyone else will remain silent until the Queen Consort is finished speaking. The use of Camilla's formal title, rather than her name, sent a clear message about where Charles's ultimate loyalty lay. After years of trying to balance his love for his family with his duty to his wife, he was finally choosing sides decisively. Camilla nodded acknowledgement to her husband before continuing her address, her voice now deadly calm. I want to be absolutely clear about something that some of you seem to have forgotten. When Charles became king, I became Queen Consort. That is not an honorary title or a courtesy extended to the king's wife. It is a constitutional position with real authority and responsibility. My duty is to support the crown and protect the monarchy's interests even when that conflicts with family members' personal desires. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to register with everyone present.
I have tried for 20 years to be the peacemaker, the diplomatic solution to family conflicts. I have absorbed criticism and attacks while trying to maintain harmony. But that approach has failed, and the monarchy has suffered as a result. Unity cannot be built on compromise with those who refuse to accept basic standards of behavior and loyalty.
The younger generation of royals who had been largely silent during the confrontation began to shift uncomfortably as they realized the implications of Camilla's words.
The informal family-style approach to royal duties that they had grown accustomed to was being replaced by something much more structured and demanding. Princess Beatrice, Andrew's daughter, finally spoke up, her voice shaking with emotion. Camilla, he's still our father. Despite his mistakes, he's part of this family. Camilla's expression softened slightly as she addressed the younger woman. Beatrice, I understand your loyalty to your father, and I respect it. But being part of this family comes with responsibilities to something larger than our personal relationships. Your father's actions have consequences that extend far beyond our private feelings. The meeting stretched into the late afternoon as Camilla methodically addressed each family member's role and responsibilities. She outlined new protocols for media interactions, established clear consequences for breaches of family loyalty, and made it unmistakably clear that the era of treating the monarchy like a personal fiefdom was over. As the sun began to set over Buckingham Palace, the assembled royals sat in stunned silence, processing the complete transformation of their family dynamics. The woman they had underestimated and dismissed had just redefined the terms of their royal existence, and there was no going back to the way things had been before. In the days following Camilla's explosive confrontation with the royal family, the palace corridors buzzed with whispered conversations and nervous energy. Staff members who had witnessed decades of royal drama recognized that something fundamental had shifted in the monarchy's power structure. The Queen Consort's decisive assertion of authority had created ripple effects that extended far beyond the immediate family circle. Prince Andrew was the first to test Camilla's resolve. Despite her explicit instructions to withdraw from public appearances, he attempted to attend a military ceremony where he had traditionally presented honors to retiring officers. When palace security, acting on Camilla's direct orders, prevented his participation, the reality of his diminished status became undeniably clear. His furious phone calls to Charles were met with unwavering support for Camilla's decision, marking a definitive end to Andrew's ability to circumvent consequences through family connections. The media response to Andrew's conspicuous absence from royal events was immediate and intense. Journalists who had long questioned the palace's handling of his scandals praised what they perceived as a new era of accountability within the monarchy. Public opinion polls showed overwhelming support for the decision to sideline Andrew, with many citizens expressing relief that the royal family was finally addressing concerns about his continued visibility. But the impact of Camilla's ultimatum extended far beyond Andrew's situation. Princess Anne, who had initially resisted what she viewed as an outsider's attempts to reshape royal traditions, found herself reassessing her position as she observed the positive public reaction to the new approach. Anne's pragmatic nature eventually overcame her personal reservations, and she became one of Camilla's most valuable allies in implementing the new standards of royal conduct.
The transformation began with Anne's public acknowledgement of Camilla's leadership during a charity event they attended together. Speaking to gathered media, Anne made an unprecedented statement about the importance of evolution within tradition and praised the Queen Consort's clear vision for the monarchy's future. The reconciliation between these two strong-willed women became a powerful symbol of the family's ability to unite behind shared principles rather than personal grievances. Prince Edward and Sophie, who had remained largely neutral during the initial confrontation, recognized the political wisdom of aligning themselves with Camilla's vision. Their decision to publicly support the new protocols and actively participate in the reformed royal structure earned them enhanced roles in the modernized monarchy.
Sophie, in particular, found herself becoming one of Camilla's closest collaborators in developing new approaches to royal charity work and public engagement.
The younger generation of royals faced their own moment of reckoning as they realized that their casual approach to royal duties would no longer be tolerated.
Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, who had previously enjoyed the benefits of royal status without fully embracing its responsibilities, were presented with a clear choice: commit fully to professional royal service or step back from public roles entirely. Surprisingly, both young women chose to embrace the challenge. Under Camilla's mentorship, they developed focused charitable portfolios and learned to navigate media attention with the professionalism their positions required. Their transformation from party-loving socialites to dedicated working royals became one of the most visible successes of Camilla's new approach. Prince William and Catherine observed these changes with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. While they appreciated Camilla's efforts to strengthen the monarchy's reputation, they also recognized that her standards would apply equally to them as future monarchs. The informal, accessible style that had made them popular with younger demographics would need to be balanced with the gravitas and authority that Camilla was demanding from all family members. The real test of William and Catherine's commitment came when they were asked to publicly support Andrew's exclusion from royal duties despite their personal sympathy for his daughters. Their decision to stand with Camilla, even when it meant disappointing family members they cared about, demonstrated their understanding that the monarchy's future required difficult choices and unwavering commitment to institutional integrity. King Charles watched these developments with a complex mixture of pride and relief. For years, he had struggled to balance his love for his often difficult family members with his duty as monarch. Camilla's decisive action had freed him from the impossible position of trying to protect everyone's feelings while serving the institution's best interests. Her willingness to be the bad guy in enforcing necessary changes allowed Charles to maintain his role as the family's patriarch, while supporting the tough decisions that his position as king required. The international response to the royal family's transformation was overwhelmingly positive. Commonwealth leaders who had privately expressed concerns about the monarchy's ability to maintain relevance and respect found themselves dealing with a more professional, focused, and accountable institution. Foreign dignitaries noted the improved atmosphere during state visits, commenting on the royal family's enhanced sense of purpose and unity. Media coverage of royal events became more substantive and less sensational as family members demonstrated their commitment to their charitable causes and constitutional duties. The gossip and scandal that had long overshadowed the monarchy's legitimate work began to fade as the family presented a united front of professionalism and dedication. But perhaps the most significant change was in Camilla herself. The woman who had once seemed content to remain in the background, supporting Charles while avoiding controversy, had emerged as a formidable leader in her own right. Her confidence in public settings increased dramatically as she no longer felt the need to constantly prove her worthiness or defer to family members who questioned her authority. The transformation was evident in everything from her bearing during state ceremonies to her interactions with world leaders.
This is a book about an issue that también tenemos en contrarios.
Foreign officials who had once treated her with polite courtesy now sought her opinions and valued her insights. The Queen Consort, who had once been dismissed as a placeholder, had become a powerful force in international diplomacy and domestic policy. 6 months after the explosive family meeting that had changed everything, the royal family gathered once again at Windsor Castle for their traditional Christmas celebration. The atmosphere was dramatically different from the tense dinner that had triggered Camilla's ultimatum. Family members who arrived at the castle carried themselves with a new sense of purpose and professionalism that extended even into their private interactions. Prince Andrew remained absent from the gathering, having finally accepted the reality of his permanent exile from royal duties. His absence, rather than creating an uncomfortable void, seemed to lift a weight from the family's collective shoulders. Without the constant tension of managing his unpredictable behavior and defending his presence, the remaining family members could focus on building positive relationships and supporting each other's work. The dinner conversations centered around the family's charitable achievements over the past year
upcoming state visits, and plans for new initiatives that would benefit the Commonwealth. The petty grievances and personal attacks that had characterized previous gatherings were replaced by substantive discussions about the monarchy's role in addressing contemporary challenges like climate change, economic inequality, and international conflict.
As Camilla looked around the table at the assembled family members, she reflected on the painful but necessary journey that had brought them to this point. The woman who had once felt like an outsider fighting for acceptance had become the architect of the royal family's renaissance. Her explosive outburst had not destroyed the monarchy, it had saved it from itself. King Charles raised his glass in a toast that formally acknowledged the transformation his wife had engineered.
To Camilla, he said, his voice carrying deep respect and gratitude, who had the courage to demand that we become worthy of the institution we serve. The response was unanimous and heartfelt, with even former critics like Princess Anne offering sincere appreciation for the Queen Consort's leadership. The family that had once been divided by personal resentments and competing loyalties was now united by shared commitment to excellence and service.
In the months that followed, the impact of Camilla's revolution continued to ripple outward. Public approval ratings for the royal family reached levels not seen since the early days of Queen Elizabeth II's reign.
The monarchy's charitable work received increased attention and support as family members demonstrated genuine expertise and passion for their causes, rather than simply fulfilling ceremonial obligations. The constitutional role of the crown became more relevant and respected as the royal family proved its ability to adapt to contemporary expectations while maintaining traditional values of duty and service.
Young people who had once viewed the monarchy as an outdated institution began to see it as a modern force for positive change. Led by individuals who understood the responsibilities that came with their extraordinary privileges. Years later, historians would mark Camilla's confrontation with her family as the moment when the British monarchy truly entered the 21st century.
Her refusal to accept the status quo, combined with her vision of what the institution could become, had transformed not just the royal family, but the very nature of modern constitutional monarchy. The woman who had once been reviled as a homewrecker had become the savior of the institution she had married into.
Through her explosive outburst and its aftermath, Queen Camilla had proven that sometimes the most effective way to unite a family is to refuse to accept behavior that divides it. Her legacy would not be defined by the controversies of her past, but by her courage to demand better from those around her, and her success in creating a royal family worthy of the people they served.
The monarchy that emerged from Camilla's revolution was stronger, more purposeful, and more respected than it had been in decades. All royals were indeed united not by blood or tradition alone, but by shared commitment to the high standards that their queen consort had the courage to demand and the wisdom to implement.